Hey there, and welcome to a deep dive into whether the future, well, is it already cyberpunk? We're taking a look at the YouTube video essay, the one you sent over, is the future cyberpunk, science fiction through philosophy and theory. It's from Epoch Philosophy, by the way. And wow, this one, it really gets you thinking.
It really does, yeah. And it's kind of freaky how relevant it feels right now, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say? Cyberpunk, I mean, look at games like Cyberpunk 2077. They're exploding, right?
Uh-huh.
It seems like it's having a moment.
It's everywhere, you're right. But the essay, it points out that it's like more than just the cool visuals, the stories. There's a reason it's hitting home for people. It's getting kind of uncomfortably familiar.
Totally. It's like the essay saying this comeback, this resurgence. It's not just, entertainment. People are feeling this real anxiety, like those dystopian cyberpunk futures. Maybe they're not so fictional.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. So the essay, it spends a lot of time on the world Mike Pondsmith created. He's the one behind the original cyberpunk game, right? They talk about Night City, and honestly, it sounds terrifying.
Yeah, not exactly a vacation spot.
Mm.
Picture this. A city, but it's run by these huge corporations. Government, barely there. These companies, they control it all. Healthcare, where you live, the police, even the military, it's a lot.
And it's interesting, the essay connects this to neoliberalism.
Uh-huh.
And just so everyone's on the same page, that's basically like letting the free market go wild. Less government, more power to big businesses.
Yeah.
And guess what? Neoliberalism was huge in the 80s, the same time cyberpunk was being created.
Right, it's like cyberpunk is this messed up mirror,
Yeah.
right? It's saying, hey, if we let these corporations run wild, this is where we end up. And in 2024, with how much power they have, kind of
Oh,
unsettling, right?
absolutely. And the essay, it uses the example of PMCs, private military corporations. In Night City, they're like the law. And then think about the real world. PMCs everywhere, even in the Iraq War, which is a lot. I think a third of U.S. forces in 2012, they were contractors.
Yeah, it's a lot of power in the hands of, well, not the government, that's for sure. And this ties into, I think, a bigger point the essay makes. It's not just corporations, it's not just the tech, it's like what happens to us, to humans in that world.
It's like everyone's just kind of checked out. In a lot of these stories, they're chasing quick highs, sex, drugs, violence, the things that make us human, like knowledge, creativity, real connection, they're gone.
Totally. It's like they've got nothing left. Like corporations took away anything meaningful, so all that's left is that immediate gratification, right?
Yeah.
No time for anything else, even if they wanted to.
And they're just trying to survive, right? Like the essay talks about how unstable work is. It's like the gig economy on steroids or something. Bleak, really. So I've got mega corporations, loss of purpose. What else?
Well, we can't talk about cyberpunk and not talk about, well, the tech, especially the whole human machine thing.
Oh, yeah. It's like what the cyberpunk is known for. Right?
Yeah.
Cybernetics, body modification, all of it. And this is interesting. The essay, it links that to transhumanism, which is a real thing.
And it's getting more real by the day, right? Transhumanism, it's like using tech to go beyond our limits. Sounds like sci-fi, but then you've got Elon Musk, Neuralink, connecting to the human brain. It's happening. It really makes you wonder, like, is this where we're headed? Just like a more intense version of right now?
It's a bit creepy when you put it that way. And there's this other thing the essay talks about, this idea of canceled futures. It's from a cultural theorist, Mark Fisher.
Oh, yeah, right, Fisher. He was saying basically that we're stuck. Like instead of new ideas about the future, all we get are rehashed old ones, old looks, remakes, sequels, you name it. We can't seem to picture anything truly different.
And even cyberpunk, right? With all the futuristic tech and everything, it still often goes back to that retro vibe, like the 80s neon thing,
It's true. This weird mix of like old and new, which actually kind of proves his point, doesn't it? Even when we try to imagine the future, we end up in the past.
Which is, let's be honest, kind of happening already. Like all over social media, it's just recycled trends. But back to cyberpunk and this whole canceled future thing, are we really just doomed to repeat everything, or is there still time to, like, change course? Because so far we've got mega corporations, tech going too fast, a culture obsessed with instant gratification instead of, actual happiness. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. And the essay, it's not like it has all the answers or anything, but it does present cyberpunk as kind of a warning, Like,
Yeah.
This is what could happen if we're not careful.
Like a wake-up call, almost. So what can we even do? I mean, it feels so huge, these problems. It's easy to feel like one person can't really change anything.
I get that. It's easy to feel that way. But I think, these big changes, they start with people, with individuals saying, nope, not okay with this, and demanding something better.
Right. Okay. I can get behind that. So how do we do that? The world feels more and more cyberpunk every day. How do we not end up in some dystopian sci-fi nightmare? What can we actually do?
Well, we can start paying more attention, right? Like,
Yeah.
how much power do corporations actually have in our lives? Do we really need to buy every new thing, every upgrade? Are we supporting companies that actually share our values? Stuff like that, it does make a difference.
That's easy to forget in like everyday life. So being a more conscious consumer, being aware of who benefits from our money.
Right.
What else?
And, think about tech more critically. We don't have to just accept every new thing that comes along. Ask questions like, how is this going to be used? What are the downsides? Who benefits? Who loses out?
It's a more mindful approach to technology because it's not going away, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tool,
Yep.
right? Not good or bad on its own.
Mm.
We decide how it gets used. And that means talking about these things, making people aware, and demanding more from, like, our leaders, the people in charge.
We do tend to talk in like really broad strokes, but what does that actually look like, pushing back against this cyberpunk future?
I mean, it can be as basic as being smart about your data, protecting your own information. It's about supporting laws that limit the power of these big tech companies, making sure technology is developed ethically,
Yeah.
responsibly.
All great points. And I think what's hitting me is this idea of like taking back our own agency. It's easy to feel powerless with these huge problems, right? But we're not just along for the ride. We have a say in this.
Exactly. We're not just characters in their story. We can be more than just consumers. We can be citizens, advocates, creators, critics, whatever it takes.
And that's what's cool about cyberpunk as a genre, right? It's not about saying this is how it'll be. It's about exploring all the possibilities, good and bad, and hopefully making us want to create a better one.
For sure. It's a call to action, hiding in sci-fi clothing.
I love that. So to bring it back to our deep dive, we've been talking about, is the future cyberpunk? Oh, the looking at that video essay. But you mentioned earlier, cyberpunk is a whole genre. There's so much more out there exploring these same themes.
There is. And they don't all agree. They show a ton of different perspectives on this whole technology, humanity, future thing. It's not just one big thing.
It's not one size fits all, right? Which is actually a good point to bring up something else. The essay, it focuses a lot on Cyberpunk 2077. But are there other works that are like different, maybe even a little hopeful? Because honestly, I'm feeling a bit weighed down by all the doom and gloom right now.
That's what's so interesting about cyberpunk, though, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not all darkness and bad vibes. There's also this, like, thread of hope underneath it all.
Yeah.
Even in the really dark stories.
So it's less about saying we're all doomed and more about asking, like, what are we even building towards here? Are there any stories that show us other options? Maybe not perfect solutions, but like different ways things could go.
Oh, totally. For every, like, corporate hellscape, there's another story about hackers or rebels fighting for freedom, being themselves. There are stories about communities figuring out how to connect and survive outside the system. And stories about using tech to empower people, not just control them.
That's actually really good to hear. Do you have any like specific examples? Because I could use a little cyberpunk optimism right now.
One that pops into my head is Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. It's a classic cyberpunk book. And yeah, it's got the dark stuff, but it also has this amazing online world, the metaverse. People can go there to escape the real world and kind of create their own identities.
That's funny you mentioned Snow Crash because I just started reading it and it made me think about movies like Alita, Battle Angel. It's a big action movie, but at its heart, it's about this young woman, right? Trying to be in control in a world that wants to control her.
Exactly. And that's what makes cyberpunk so engaging. It's not just about robots and computers. It's about what it means to be human, how we adapt and invent, and yeah, even have hope when everything seems impossible.
So where does that leave us? We did a deep dive on cyberpunk and how it feels strangely relevant to today. What are some things we can take away from all this?
Well, the biggest one for me is that the future isn't set in stone. It's not like we're just along for the ride to some predetermined ending.
Like we're all stuck as characters in some cyberpunk story, powerless to change anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have a say in how this all plays out. And cyberpunk, with all its flaws and thought-provoking ideas, reminds us of that. It's like this urgent message to pay attention, ask the hard questions, and never stop imagining other ways things could be.
To borrow a line from a different sci-fi universe, there's always a choice, which I love. So to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive gave you a lot to think about. We talked about what happens when technology grows unchecked, the allure and potential dangers of transhumanism, and even the idea that maybe we're losing our ability to imagine a better tomorrow. But we also found glimmers of hope, stories of resilience, and the power of individuals to forge their own path.
Absolutely. And as our world gets more complex, more driven by technology, it's more important than ever to be present, to stay informed, and to actively shape the kind of future we want to see.
So keep exploring those cyberpunk worlds, the books, the movies, the games, all of it, because those stories might just spark the inspiration, the ideas, even the courage to build a future that's both high-tech and deeply human.
A future where technology serves people, not the other way around.
Perfectly said. Until next time, everyone, keep those big questions coming and keep diving deep.